And so, good evening, everyone. For those here in room 14, and for those who are joining us online, I think we have a number of interested participants who are joining us from various regions of the world. So a very warm welcome to this event, accelerating the transition from HHP to biopesticides and to agroecological alternatives. It's really wonderful to see so many people at this time of the day after a long week of negotiation. So thank you very much for this extra effort. I'm Charlotte Pavageau. I work for the BioVision Foundation as a senior program manager, supporting agroecological movements and efforts in many parts of the world. So today, with a group of organizers, we wanted to put the spotlight on HHP. We know they are extremely harmful both to the environment and to the public health. They contaminate soil, water, air, they reduce biodiversity, they can disrupt entire ecosystems and also lead to pesticides poisoning, especially among farmers and agricultural workers. So no need to remind you that pesticides and HHP in particular is at the heart of the BRS Convention. They are the visible part of the iceberg as they remain the most important group of chemicals discussed. But what we truly aim tonight is to make the visible invisible. And those are the alternatives, the non-chemical alternatives that can deliver on a range of benefits. So this is what we're going to do tonight, bring the spotlights to those alternatives, to efforts from various regions of the world that are transitioning away from HHP. So I think this is going to be inspiring. And let's start by setting the scene straight away. To begin, I'm delighted to invite Ludovic Bernaudat. He's the head of the Knowledge and Risk Unit, at UNEP's Chemicals and Health Branch to open our session. And so Ludovic, you're going to help us understand the broader relevance of alternative to HHP, to the BRS Convention, and to other global chemical frameworks. So Ludovic, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And well, welcome tonight for this event. Congratulations to all of you. It's day 5 of a busy week, and it's the last side event of that week, and it's amazing to see all of you here. So I wanted to bring a bit in this event some reflection of what we mean by, how do we replace the use of chemicals in general by safer practices, safer chemicals. So first of all, we have to recognize that hazardous chemicals pose a risk to human health and the environment across the life cycle, not only where they're used, but also when they are produced. They pose a risk to the workers that produce them, the transport, when there's leakages, the use, of course, and then when they're degraded into waste. There's the whole life cycle we have to consider. Promoting sustainable alternatives is essential for transitioning to a toxic-free future. And here I want to reflect a bit. Almost 2 years ago, we all adopted in the international community, the stakeholders, governments, NGOs, IGOs, and private sector adopted the global framework on chemicals. And we need to now really work towards this toxic-free future that we mentioned. Of course, we have roadmaps established by the conventions that are reuniting us this week and next. But the global framework on chemicals also provides some basic guidance. So when we talk about sustainable alternatives to hazardous chemicals, of course, people think substances and material. That's you replace an hazardous chemical by another. That's okay. But not only. We also talk about changing technologies, changing practices that replace harmful chemicals and harmful practices while minimizing the risk to human health and the environment. These alternatives are designed to perform the same function as the hazardous chemical, but with reduced toxicity, lower environmental impact, and greater efficiency. This is important because otherwise they will not be adopted. You can't propose to a worker or an industry to adopt a less efficient system. No one will accept that. I would add that they need to be economically affordable. And of course, the alternatives may temporarily be more expensive. And that's where in the Global Framework on Chemicals, we're working on financing options. We're working on taxation of the bad practice and incentives of the good practice. These are how we can work on the economical factor. They must be technologically available. And that doesn't mean that they are available in a lab in Basel here in Switzerland, but they are available on the field in Burkina Faso by the farmers who want to use a particular pesticide. And this availability requires capacity building and requires information and requires access. So the type of sustainable alternatives are, of course, safer chemical substitute, green chemical solution, designing chemicals that degrade safely, reducing hazardous byproducts in production, non-chemical approach, integrated pest management, for example, is an example of non-chemical option, innovative material, and redesigning the way we produce products. So as I said in the first slide, we have here the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention, and they all promote sustainable sound management of chemicals. They promote the limitation on the transfer of hazardous waste across border. They promote sharing of information between countries when you want to export or import hazardous products. And the Stockholm Convention, of course, addresses the particular cases of POPs. Not all of the POPs, but not all of the chemicals that we want to regulate have yet been included in the POPs Convention, but the large majority have. And the links to the Global Framework on Chemicals. So here I want to take here the strategic objective that's mostly looking at the private sector and how we operate. And there's a number of targets that call for green sustainable chemistry, better practices, and replacing technologies and hazardous ways by better ones. How to facilitate this by inputting on the financial means and making it available, but more importantly also communicating to the public about why we are doing this, the work we do, and how this improves their global health. In particular, and that's very diving into the topic of this side event tonight, ICCM5, so the International Chemicals Management Conference, the fifth one, in September 2023 in Bonn, adopted a resolution 11 that on highly hazardous pesticide that calls on the stakeholders under the leadership of FAO to develop a global alliance on the HHP, the highly hazardous pesticides. So take the examples I've given globally on all these chemicals, but here we dive into really the highly hazardous pesticides aspect. And there's a resolution, of course, but there's also a target A7 that speaks to HHP. The Alliance is tasked with developing an action plan with clear goals and milestones, and the plan will focus on raising awareness of the dangers of these pesticides to health and the environment, identifying and promoting safer agricultural practices, highlighting successful case studies of countries that have phased out HHPs, and I think we will hear tonight about one such example. So it works. I mean, it does work in practice, not only in books. Assisting low and middle-income countries in building regulatory capacity and facilitating access to alternatives, and mobilizing support for farmers, agricultural workers, and the agri-food supply chain in transitioning away from HHP, where the risks have not been managed toward less hazardous alternative. So the key principles to here I wanted the key principle in identifying replacement options and evaluating alternatives to HHP. This is quite important in the context of the GFC. So first of all, on principles, we need to understand the pest problem. The pesticide HHPs are often broad spectrum chemicals that are used for various pests across different crops. And if we dig into and do spend a bit more time researching what the specific pest or disease we try to eradicate, we might not need to use these broad spectrum pesticides. The second principle is avoiding regrettable substitution. I think in the Stockholm Convention, we have cases and cases of we replace a chemical, we ban a chemical, and then another one comes up that turns out to be also a POP, and then we have to ban it, and then the cycle goes on and on and on. So we need to avoid that regrettable substitution. We need to provide solutions, not just products. So alternative to HHP should involve a range of solutions such as cultural practices, resistant seed varieties, physical traps, or introducing beneficial organisms rather than solely relying on chemicals. There are good examples around here on this particular aspect. I live in the countryside and these practices are used. Conduct risk assessments, so replacement must prioritize human health and the environment protection, including assessing risk and considering resistance management with agroecological techniques offering lower risk of resistance development. Act quickly. So once HHPs are identified as harmful, fast-track approval for lower risk products may be necessary using a phased approach to transition to safer alternatives. And the last key principle is stakeholder consultation. We need to involve farmers. We need to involve the workers that will use the alternatives, because in the end, if they're not comfortable with what we are proposing, they will not use it. They will easily return to the previous practices. And this is not only valid for farming. I have worked on mining for a number of years, and it is exactly the same. So replacement options, we talk about agroecology, ecosystem services, using natural pest controls for predators, soil microorganisms, and beneficial plants, offering free and sustainable options. Basically going back to what our ancestors did 200 years ago before chemicals were introduced into farming. Cultural practices, so techniques like crop rotation, intercropping, and mulching to help manage pests without chemicals. Physical controls, barriers and pest removal methods such as mesh netting and weed control protect crops. Crop resistance, so pest-resistant varieties to reduce the need for pesticide and lower cost. Of course, biological control agent, insects, fungi, semi-chemicals, using pheromones can help to manage pests without chemicals. Biopesticides that are plant-based, synthetic chemicals that are not HHP finally. And then evaluating alternative to HHPs, as I mentioned before, I won't go too much in detail, is efficacy. The alternatives need to be at least as efficient to avoid reducing production and yield. They need to be available, and the application needs to be possible in the geography that we try to provide alternatives. They need to be not hazardous to human health and the environment. They need to be resistant and durable. They need to be feasible technically in the context that we want to introduce them. Cost effective. They need to be cost effective. Also, legislation. The alternatives must meet national regulations and go through a registration process. So that's an important part too, and that's where the GFC plays an important role. And then we need to consult to address the issue of incentive and disincentives, the tax and incentives, taxing the bad practices and promoting good ones. Don't worry, it's only 2 slides left. No, well, only one actually. So challenge and opportunities, I want to here work on the challenges to promoting sustainable alternative. So at the moment, we lack accessible, reliable data on safety, performance, and life cycle impact of alternatives that hinders informed substitution decisions. So we need to work on that. We need to use the tools that we have now, new technologies, to make this information more available globally so that farmers know in what condition to use what alternative in preference. There's gaps in toxicity data, especially for newer or less commercial alternatives that need to be worked on. Lack of technical and financial capacity. So many countries and small and medium enterprises in the sector lack the resources to evaluate, develop, or implement alternatives, and we need to work on that, provide assistance. The Global Framework on Chemical as a fund to help people access this initial funding needs. And of course, we need there's high initial cost for R&D and testing, but that is the true this aspect is also true of the development of HHPs. So it's not only linked to the to these particular alternative issues. One aspect of the challenge is a resistance to change and regulatory gap. Farmers that have used the same practice over years will, of course, be reluctant to change because there's a risk of yield, there's a risk of income, and unless we spend enough time with them to introduce the new technologies, it will fail. And that's why the economical aspects are important. And we need to work with governments to make sure legislation is up to date. However, there are opportunities. I mean, there are a growing market for green and sustainable and circular solution all over the world. People are more interested into knowing what goes into their food, and therefore they prefer eco-friendly options as other ones. Circular economy models create space for non-toxic, recyclable and renewable materials. So we need to consider that circular economic models. Stronger global cooperation and the BRS and the Global Framework on Chemicals will help also ensure that governments have the capacity to work across this framework together and in integrated fashion, as we have talked during the lunchtime event on synergies. And then there's incentives from the SDGs, the ESG framework, and innovative policies. So the SDGs has a number of goals that go into the same direction. So there's an incentive to work on that. Environmental, social, and governance criteria and national innovation agendas reward safer and greener chemical use. Also, they should. And then we can look at private sector partnerships and green finance instruments that are increasingly supporting substitution initiative. And again, here I will go back and I close down now on the development of the implementation programs under the GFC, where finance is a key aspect. So thank you very much. And I'm done now, so you can clap. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ludovic. That's a very strong start. And thank you for highlighting again the role of alternatives within the BRS, the perfect alignment with other targets from other frameworks, such as the Global Chemical Framework. I really liked what you said. We shouldn't focus on product, we should provide solutions. And that goes in the direction of thinking about more integrated approach in our food systems. Agroecology is one of them. Especially when opportunities are growing, when efficiency has been proven, when an economic case is also there, and structure and partnership can help us. So I'm going to turn now to this side of the table. We're now going to have 3 focus inputs, 5 minutes each, to unpack the health impact of pesticides, highlight agroecological solutions, and examine more in depth, the practical barriers and the policy options for biopesticides. So That's our free fire inputs. And we're going to start with Shweta Dabholkar. She's a project and policy officer at the Center for Pesticide Suicide Prevention. And Shweta will take us back to the critical issues of public health impact for pesticides. Shweta, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I'm just going to check how this works first. Okay, got it. Good evening and a warm welcome to everyone. I would first like to thank the BRS Secretariat for giving us the opportunity to organize this event. I also want to thank my collaborators from BioVision and PAN for putting in so much effort into organizing this event. The panelists who will be joining us on the panel discussion later today. And lastly, to all the participants who've joined us online and in person. Thank you so much, everyone. Today, I'll be speaking about the health impacts of highly hazardous pesticides, or HHPs, which are a small minority of all pesticides. However, they present particularly high levels of acute or chronic hazards to human health or environment. They are classified highly hazardous under FAO and WHO guidelines. There's also a beautiful JMPM criteria that helps countries identify HHPs. There are different types of pesticide poisonings based on their, sorry, I'm just going to stand. Is that okay? I hope that's okay. Based on their duration of exposure, if it's short-term exposure, they can have acute effects. If it's long-term exposure, they can have chronic effects. Based on level of intent, it can be occupational, accidental, and intentional, especially common amongst agrarian and agricultural communities and rural communities because they live in close proximity to HHPs. Based on the source of exposure, pesticide poisoning could occur through inhalation, skin contact, or oral poisoning. Now, while a pesticide poisoning is extremely common in low and middle income countries, despite its hazards, it's widely used across all countries. Many high-income countries have banned certain HHPs. However, they manufacture it and they continue to sell it to low and middle income countries. So they are equally a part of the problem. There are, in terms of causes and risk factors, there are two most common causes and risk factors of pesticide poisoning. First being its excessive use, and second, its easy accessibility. In terms of health effects, short-term HHP exposure can lead to neurological damage like headache, dizziness, seizures, coma, gastrointestinal issues like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, respiratory issues like breathing difficulty, chest tightness, and skin and eyes issues like rashes, burns, and irritations. In terms of long-term HHP exposure, this can have chronic effects. It can impact neurological systems, leading to memory loss. It is strongly related to Parkinson's disease. It can also cause cancer. HHPs are endocrine disruptors, and they can lead to infertility, birth defects, hormonal issues, and pregnancy complications. It can also cause respiratory issues like asthma and many other cardiovascular and pulmonary diseases. It can also lead to organ failure. It can impact liver and kidney organs as well. Now, sorry. So these are, apart from all these health effects, in low and middle income countries, easy access to lethal means of self-harm, in this case, pesticide poisoning, is very strongly linked to suicides. For example, in low and middle income countries, if somebody is going through some personal crisis, if they have scored less marks in their exams, if they've had a fight with their partner, if they have broken up with their girlfriend or are facing serious issues of debt, and if a pesticide bottle is lying around when they're going through this emotional distress, they are very highly likely going to consume that pesticide from that bottle because it's lying around right next to them in their house. So this easy accessibility is going to very highly likely going to lead to them consuming that pesticide, and then very highly likely the outcome is going to be fatal because of its level of toxicity. So suicides are very strongly linked to pesticide poisoning. especially in low and middle income countries. Easy accessibility to lethal means of self-harm during moments of crisis, and these decisions are taken in less than a minute, determines fatality. So who's at most risk? Farmers, agricultural workers, children living in farming areas, pregnant women, rural populations with poor healthcare, and especially young people. So we've spoken a lot about health effects, but these health effects also lead to economic consequences, so economic impact of HHP poisoning could be in billions of dollars because it can impact health. It also leads to healthcare expenditure to countries. Treatment, medication, hospitalization, these are all costs borne by governments in case of pesticide poisoning. Loss of work productivity, agricultural employees who are working in fields, their families who come in close contact with them. All of this can affect individuals and their families and impact broader economy through loss of work productivity and tax revenues. Impact on children's cognitive development, exposures to HHPs can impact their education and their future economic potential. There are various metrics to assess loss of productivity, like years of life lost, especially due to suicides, disability adjusted life years lost, quality adjusted life years lost due to premature death from pesticide poisoning and also pesticide exposure. All these costs are huge. Hence, through our side event, we are focusing on solutions and call to action. First being promoting biopesticides, banning highly hazardous pesticides, training farmers, making them aware about alternatives available, and strengthening rural healthcare systems. Thank you so much, everyone. That was my presentation. And I also have a little announcement to make. Our organization also makes documentary films. And today, at the end of this event, we are going to launch the trailer of our movie, which we have recently shot in India. The movie depicts an amazing natural farming policy intervention of the state government of Andhra Pradesh, which is doing a lot in natural farming and promoting natural farming. And the movie is going to speak about natural farming, that natural farming intervention in India. And I hope all of you could join us in that launch. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Shweta. And I think we felt your passion. And public health and suicides can be very strong motivational drivers to eliminate HHP. I also like that you remind us about the economic factors. So usually the true cost of HHP can also be a strong block to build a case for policy reforms and change on the ground. So our next speaker is going to bring us to the heart of one of this week's most debated products, the Chlorpyrifos, already famous for its health and environmental impacts. So it might spark more discussion next week as parties consider its potential listing under the Rotterdam Convention. But we won't stop at the problem. We will also explore agroecological alternatives. And to guide us through this, I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Tadesse Amera. He's a co-coordinator of the Pesticide Action Network International. Tadesse, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, online and in person. Yeah, with regards to Chlorpyrifos, first, before I go to the alternatives, as the slogan of this BRS is making the invisible visible, and there were also some debates the day before and today that Chlorpyrifos doesn't affect bees and other pollinators. I will start just from that. This is a picture taken from Africa where Chlorpyrifos was used for locust control, and the farmers lost their bees and their beehives became like empty, and they brought dead bees in their hands and they were crying. So this is a live example that we saw in Africa. So it affects pollinators and bees. Going back to my topic, on the alternatives aspect, we are using the food spray technique, we say. A colleague in Australia from the primary cotton industries of Australia invented a technique called, a recipe called food spray. It's a fermented product used to attract and arrest predatory insects into the cotton field. What we do is we keep the natural refuge around the cotton fields, and it conserves the biocontrol approach and the insects which are beneficial insects being reserved in those areas. What we do is we follow three interconnected approaches. By manipulating the crop habitat, using the crop habitat in the surrounding of the cotton field. And we spray the crop foliage with the food spray that we produce, the farmers themselves produce. And we avoid also using synthetic pesticides, because if we use synthetic pesticides, these natural enemies will die. What we do is, before the cotton flowers, when the cotton has 3-4 leaves, we spray this food spray in the cotton field, and it has a smell. It has a smell like insects. The pests, like the smell that the pests generate when they are chewing or when they are doing their activities in the cotton field. And these natural enemies are attracted with that smell. It's mimicking that smell, and it goes to the cotton field, and it infests that cotton field before the cotton flowers. By the time the cotton flowers, these natural enemies are already in the field. And when they lay eggs, these natural enemies eat the eggs and the larvae of pests. And with this, we totally controlled bollworms and all the cotton pests. And the farmers used this one, and we started like integrated pest management approach. But the farmers said, we can control pests without pesticides, and they declared themselves organic cotton farmers. And since 2017, we have been using this food spray, and we totally controlled bollworm, and the farmers are certified organic internationally since 2017. If we see how its effectiveness is, you can see from 2017 to 2022, by the time we start, the farmers' engagement was very high, and you can see the three graphs: the average, the organic cotton one, the national average maximum, the national average minimum, and always the organic cotton production is higher than the national average. Why in 2020 it was very low it was the time of COVID. The farmers were at home, they couldn't follow the proper farmer field schools approach, and they couldn't also communicate and go to their farms at that time. Otherwise, we are still using it, and we have more than 8,000 farmers in this cotton field. And this is also very known by the Ministry of Agriculture. We are working with the local agriculture department and the Ministry of Agriculture, and the farmers are also having local, national, and international bargaining power for the quality of cotton that they are producing. And recently, this technique is adopted by vegetable farmers, and in northwestern part of Ethiopia, where bees are declining because of the use of different pesticides, we are now using this food spray technique to other crops as well, to save also pollinators and bees. So with the engagement of these farmers, through the farmer field school approach, Chlorpyrifos and other pesticides, with Chlorpyrifos and other pesticides are replaced. And the farmers are also certified since 2017. And as I said, these are adopted to other crops, because always the question is why cotton? Cotton is called the Museum of Pests because it attracts almost all types of pests. And if you control pests in cotton, you can control pests in other crops. And we succeeded with that. This is now also adopted by other neighboring regions in Ethiopia, and the cotton production is also being expanded. As a last remark, we really we are very much disappointed that Chlorpyrifos, is asked for exemption to list of, to the shopping lists of different pastes. But we know that in different areas in India and other countries, we have different alternatives to Chlorpyrifos, but the list is already went and it's already exempted, but we have alternatives to that. What we say is it should not have been ratified by exemptions. It should be with no exemptions. But now we call upon also our delegates and parties at least to list it under Rotterdam Convention and Annex 3 so that the trade is restricted, because it is a neurotoxin pesticide which affects children, which affects our farmers, and also which affects the environment and pollinators. When we stop Chlorpyrifos in some parts of Ethiopia, you can see in our farming areas all these traditional beehives hang in every tree and having bees and other pollinators in the fields and in the surrounding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tadesse. And what a beautiful picture. So thank you for showing that alternatives can be viable, can be productive. And what I get from your presentation is that we need to intensify the system, but intensify it in knowledge. We have this model of farmer field school to ensure that knowledge is spread. So part of the biological-based alternative you mentioned, we have biopesticides. And when they are produced and developed locally, those alternatives can be very promising, but they also face a number of regulatory and very practical barriers on the ground. So for our next talk, I'm happy to welcome Souleymane Yougbare. He's joining us online from Burkina Faso. He's a technical director at the Council of Organic Agriculture in Burkina Faso. And he will present efforts from national actors to come together and to try to overcome challenges of biopesticides from a policy perspective. So please, Yougbare, bienvenue. I would like just to remind to participants online that a translation is available from French to English and English to French. We're going to keep the English version here in the room. Yougbare, est-ce que tu nous entends?
Oui, bonjour à tout le monde, je vous entends parfaitement. Alors, merci bien Charlotte pour la parole et merci aussi à Biovision pour cette initiative. Et moi, je vais beaucoup plus m'attarder sur une initiative qui fédère en tout cas un certain nombre d'acteurs pour la promotion des bio-intrants, notamment les biopesticides au niveau du Burkina Faso. Donc, ça sera l'exemple d'un cadre de concertation que nous avons mis en place depuis les années 2022. Diapo.
Juste une minute, Yougbare, on active l'onglet dans notre...
Si c'est OK, vous pouvez me signaler.
Oui. 2 minutes, juste. Désolé pour ce petit... I'm really sorry for this technical incident. We are just trying to get the translation to work for the room. I'm so sorry for this. This happens. We really wanted to be inclusive tonight and get an example here from the ground, from national actors, bio-input producers that are developing their solution together with farmers, together with national research organizations, and who decided to have a consultation platforms where they could meet, discuss these challenges, and come up with an action plan and decide on the necessary reforms that needs to happen to ensure that those alternatives are supported. It seems we are facing some issues to get the English translation.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna improvise and
Can we try again?
okay. Yougbare, can you?
Oui,
Perfect.
merci.
I'm so sorry for this again.
Je peux aller, c'est bon? Allô?
Yes.
Ok, merci. Alors, donc, je disais que pour ma part, je vais mettre l'accent sur une initiative de promotion des bio-intrants au Burkina Faso qui est portée par une multitude d'acteurs au niveau national afin de promouvoir les bio-intrants, plus spécifiquement les biopesticides. Alors, diapo suivant. Vous pouvez avancer? Thank you. Alors, donc, il faut dire que tout est parti d'un contexte au niveau national, au niveau du Burkina Faso, où depuis 2023, nous avons pu, au niveau national, élaborer et faire valider une stratégie nationale de développement de l'agroécologie pour une période de 5 ans assortie d'un plan d'action. Alors, dans cette stratégie nationale de développement de l'agroécologie, nous avons identifié un certain nombre de leviers sur lesquels l'agroécologie pourrait aller à l'échelle au niveau national. Et parmi ces leviers, nous avons identifié les bio-intrants. Et dans l'identification des bio-intrants comme levier de mise à l'échelle de l'agroécologie, le constat fait ressortir 3 éléments de non-satisfaction, notamment en ce qui concerne l'offre en bio-intrants. Donc, par rapport à ce diagnostic qui a été fait, nous avons constaté qu'au niveau de l'offre en bio-intrants, nous avons une faible maîtrise des procédés de production à grande échelle par les producteurs, les transformateurs, ainsi de suite. Et un autre aussi problème, c'est l'accès difficile à la matière première pour produire même ces bio-intrants. Le deuxième élément de diagnostic au niveau des bio-intrants, c'est la question de la demande même. Il faut dire malheureusement au niveau national, nous avons une inaccessibilité géographique de l'efficacité limitée de certains biopesticides. Et malheureusement aussi, nous avons pour la plupart des producteurs, productrices au niveau du Burkina, une méconnaissance même de ces biopesticides-là et par ricochet même la faible maîtrise de l'usage de ces biopesticides par les utilisateurs finaux. Et enfin, au niveau institutionnel et politique, il faut dire là-bas aussi, il y a des insuffisances, notamment au niveau des dispositifs institutionnels pour encadrer cette filière-là. Elle n'est pas assez bien développée et malheureusement aussi, les bio-intrants ne bénéficient pas d'homologation et de règlements spécifiques et adaptés par les services compétents. Donc, pour ce qui concerne les biopesticides de façon globale, les homologations ne sont pas, en tout cas, adaptées avec le contexte au niveau national, ce qui a amené au niveau du Conseil national de l'agriculture biologique, mon organisation, à mettre en place un cadre de concertation des acteurs pour justement travailler sur ces défis-là. On peut avancer. Et ces défis-là, par travers la mise en place des cadres de concertation, diapo s'il vous plaît, voilà. Alors, pour ce qui concerne la mise en place des cadres de concertation, il faut remarquer, souligner qu'au-delà de ces défis que nous avons soulignés, notamment au niveau institutionnel, nous avons aussi fait ce constat-là qu'au niveau national, nous avons une multitude d'acteurs qui interviennent dans le domaine des biopesticides, mais malheureusement, ces acteurs-là n'étaient pas organisés autour d'une même table pour discuter des problématiques. Et encore un autre constat, c'est qu'il n'y avait pas de référentiel national qui est adapté pour, en tout cas, les biopesticides. Et aussi, un des troisièmes éléments de constat, c'est qu'au niveau des commandes, c'est-à-dire pour chaque campagne agricole, que ce soit humide ou sec, le gouvernement burkinabé ne faisait pas de commandes en matière de biopesticides. Donc, c'est au regard de ces constats-là que en octobre 2022, nous avons mis en place ce cadre de concertation-là, justement pour lever ces défis de faible concertation, d'absence de référentiel et de la faible prise en compte. Donc, ce cadre de concertation réunit les acteurs qui sont dans les biopesticides, dans les biofertilisants et aussi les semences paysannes. Mais pour ce qui concerne les biopesticides, avec les acteurs, nous avons essayé quand même de faire une définition, diapo suivant, une définition de ces biopesticides. On peut avancer, s'il vous plaît? Voilà, une définition de ces biopesticides avant même de pouvoir, en tout cas, trouver des solutions ou en tout cas faire du plaidoyer en sa faveur pour la prise en compte au niveau des commandes publiques. Et nous avons tous de commun accord défini les biopesticides comme des agents naturels ou biologiques qui sont utilisés pour lutter contre les parasites tels que les ingrédients, les mauvaises herbes ou les maladies des plantes. Et généralement, pour ce qui concerne le Burkina Faso, les biopesticides sont dérivés d'animaux, de plantes, de bactéries, de champignons ou d'autres matériaux naturels, notamment le Burkina phosphate ici au Burkina. Et ce sont des éléments qui sont considérés comme des alternatives écologiques vis-à-vis des produits chimiques de synthèse. Diapo. Alors, donc, au vu de tout ce constat et aussi une définition donnée, et pour ce qui concerne la reconnaissance ou en tout cas l'acceptation de ces biopesticides dans les politiques publiques, nous avons voulu aller à une normalisation, c'est-à-dire arriver à développer un contexte dans lequel tous les acteurs se reconnaissent et on puisse normer les biopesticides au niveau national. Et pourquoi, en tout cas, aller à cette normalisation? D'abord, dans un premier temps, c'est de faciliter l'accès au marché national de ces biopesticides-là, donc la question de commande publique. Dans un deuxième temps, c'est de mettre à la disposition des acteurs des biopesticides de qualité, parce qu'il faut reconnaître que pour la plupart des biopesticides qui sont produits par des producteurs, la qualité est remise en cause par les utilisateurs finaux sur le terrain. Le troisième élément, c'est d'assurer que ces biopesticides ne contiennent pas de contaminants pathogènes ou toxiques qui pourraient nuire à la santé humaine ou animale. Donc, le fait que nous allons utiliser des ingrédients au niveau national, donc c'est de travailler justement avec les acteurs de la recherche locale pour travailler à éviter ces contaminants-là dans ces biopesticides. Et ensuite, c'est de renforcer la confiance des consommateurs dans les produits biologiques en garantissant que les biopesticides respectent des normes rigoureuses. Et du coup, ce travail-là sera fait de façon participative avec l'ensemble des acteurs inclus dans le domaine des biopesticides. Et enfin, c'est d'encourager justement la recherche et l'innovation dans la production des biopesticides en définissant des critères clairs pour le développement de nouveaux produits. Donc, c'est tous ces éléments-là mis ensemble qui nous ont permis justement à aller vers une normalisation pour ce qui concerne les biopesticides au niveau national. Diapo suivant. Alors, qui sont les acteurs impliqués dans ce processus de normalisation? Comme quoi, pour dire que ce travail est vraiment fait de façon participative et adapté pour le contexte local burkinabé. Et les acteurs qui sont impliqués dans ce processus-là sont pour la plupart les paysans et les paysannes qui sont en premier lieu parce que c'est eux qui vont utiliser ces produits-là sur le terrain. Et ensuite, nous avons aussi les unités de production de biopesticides parce qu'au Burkina, nous avons une vingtaine, ou en tout cas une vingtaine de promoteurs de biopesticides et ils sont aussi impliqués dans le dispositif. Nous avons aussi les acteurs de la recherche burkinabé parce que pour question de qualité, il faut justement impliquer la recherche pour des formulations ou en tout cas des propositions de fiches techniques plus adaptées au niveau local. Nous avons également aussi les départements ministériels en charge des intrants agricoles, notamment le ministère de l'Agriculture, pour les impliquer dans le processus afin que à la chaîne du plaidoyer, ils puissent accepter le document final qui sera produit par les acteurs. Nous avons également aussi l'Agence burkinabé de la normalisation, qui est l'agence nationale qui régularise tout ce qui est comme document de normes ou de normalisation. Et enfin, nous avons les organisations de la société civile organisées en acteurs non étatiques, notamment les ONG, les associations, qui participent activement à ce processus de normalisation. Et comment est-ce que ce processus est fait? On peut avancer, diapo. Il faut dire que de prime abord, nous sommes passés par d'abord des sessions de renforcement des capacités des acteurs.
I'm really sorry, we just have 30 seconds left.
D'accord. Nous sommes allés rapidement à des renforcements des capacités, ensuite la mise en place des commissions techniques, des ateliers techniques et actuellement, nous sommes dans la phase atelier technique pour enfin aboutir à des ateliers de validation et le plaidoyer. Diapo. Diapo, s'il vous plaît. Alors, donc, au niveau du plaidoyer, il faut dire qu'en ce qui concerne la loi, puisque au Burkina Faso, la gestion des pesticides est encadrée par une loi et nous sommes actuellement en attente du processus de normalisation pour influencer cette loi-là afin de prendre en compte les biopesticides dans les dispositions réglementaires. Diapo. Diapo suivant, s'il vous plaît. Alors, donc, quelles sont les perspectives par rapport au cadre de concertation? Nous avons relevé 5 éléments de pesticides. Dans un premier temps, c'est de renforcer la collaboration avec l'ensemble des acteurs, c'est d'accélérer la reconnaissance des biointrants, ce qui concerne la reconnaissance et aussi l'influence des lois. Et ensuite, c'est d'intégrer ces biopesticides-là dans les politiques publiques et les systèmes d'achat. Ensuite, c'est de soutenir la recherche et l'innovation tout en encourageant des investissements ciblés. Et enfin, nous allons poursuivre le renforcement des capacités des producteurs sur la fabrication de ces biopesticides afin d'accroître leur expertise et leur efficacité. Diapo. On peut avancer? Voilà, donc je vais peut-être m'arrêter à là. Et s'il y a des questionnements, nous pourrions rebondir. Désolé, avec la traduction, ça prenait un peu de temps. Donc, voilà. Donc, merci encore pour votre aimable attention et je reste disponible pour des éventuelles questions. Merci.
Thank you so much. So in this example, we saw the commitments, and particularly from the Ministry of Agriculture, to develop its own national, locally led normalization process for ensuring that those locally led solutions can be scaled up, can thrive, can have access to the market. So thank you to the three of you for those very insightful contributions. And let's move now to our panel discussion. In this panel, we'll hear about countries' experiences and experts who are already taking action to reduce and replace HHP. So here the focus is going to be very practical. What's happening in the ground in the country, what has been working, what can policy and partnership support to accelerate this transition. And let's begin with Sri Lanka. Mr. Jayakody Arachchige Sumith from the Pesticide Registrar at the Ministry of Agriculture in Sri Lanka. I have one main question from you. Can you share your experience in addressing HHP-related challenges to health and the environment in your country, and maybe highlight the concrete example that was so successful in reducing death-related suicide linked to HHP?
Very much. At the outset, I must thankful for the organizers for inviting me for this very important discussion. Well, now the question is, I think, regarding our achievements. Sri Lanka, as a small island nation in the Indian Ocean, so we have very good, excellent examples and achievements with respect to managing highly hazardous pesticides. For example, one achievement is we were able to eliminate malaria without DDT. That is one very good example and achievement. And also with respect to highly hazardous pesticides, from since its beginning of regulation of pesticides from 1980, and we were able to eliminate 55 highly hazardous pesticides. And at the same time, we were able to reduce the number of poisoning cases, especially suicides, mounting to 93,000 lives. So we were able to save within 15 years 93 lives. And also at the same time, we were able to save deaths. Okay, so there are numerous, at the same time, there are numerous examples of reducing occupational poisonings. So we know at the rate of poisoning cases, incidents at the already ongoing. So this achievement is very remarkable. And at the same time, there are a couple of other achievements with respect to this regulation of highly hazardous pesticides. In 2021, we got actually appraised by international organizations like World Future Council. They offered us the remarkable award for success in implementation of highly hazardous pesticides. That is kind of the so-called Oscar in environmental policies. So that achievement, I think, we geared for further actions, and also at the same time we are now working on working towards for going for 0 deaths by 2035. So we have already proposed an action plan. I think we were able to see that action plan during the plenary, during the high-level segment in this COP. And we are planning to go for 90% reduction of acute deaths from pesticides by 2030 and 0 deaths by 2035. That is our goal and our future plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stay with you. So you are an Oscar winner, and I'm very interested to learn a bit more. What are the success factors here? Maybe can you reflect a little bit on maybe what helped to mobilize political will to come up with such an ambitious target?
Yes, actually, the Sri Lankan government and we had political will, and otherwise we can't achieve this kind of success. And we love lives, we love environment. I think this beautiful country, we love every life. So we are working towards further strengthening this the saving lives and occupational points, because at the moment there are a couple of other legacy pesticides harming our farming populations and the environment. For example, if you take the Chlorpyrifos itself, we proposed to the Rotterdam Convention as a proposal. Chlorpyrifos proposal to the Rotterdam Convention. I think we were able to show the international community the harmful effects of human health and the environment. For example, so we are always talking about the human health, but we are not focusing or addressing the environmental health. Because there is a very popular, I think, there is a popular academic slogan. If you want to know the environmental health, you need to ask from a fish. That is a very popular academic slogan. So we studied on fish, endemic fish species in Sri Lankan streams, and we focused Chlorpyrifos and other organophosphates. We were able to show the acetylcholinesterase, one of the main enzymes responsible in our organisms. So the Chlorpyrifos were able to, it caused up to 76% of inhibition. So we knew our human populations, when we work in working capacity, so working environments, there are monitoring elements, so monitoring organizations, so people there. But no one cares about the environmental species. So 76% inhibition is going to be a kind of a detrimental situation. So that kind of chemical Chlorpyrifos, and also there are human health impacts. We measured the household dust and occupational poisonings. So we have reported all those things in our proposal. So likewise, now we have a couple of other ingredients identified causing suicides. I think out of now from, these are again from legacy list of pesticides. The most harming compound is propanopos and the carbosulfur. So they are the leading ones. So now we are working towards going for regulatory actions with respect to these kind of legacy compounds. So I think we will be able to go for a 0 target by addressing this kind of highly hazardous pesticide. But we are not actually going alone as a country. We are always backed by the international conventions, SDG goals, ICMF's targets. So we are very, these are very, they are very helpful for these international organizations and their activities for our decision-making process.
So increasing partnership, showing linkages with wider objectives and other conventions can support your government action. So let's now turn to another country, to Ethiopia. We have two representatives here. So Tadesse, we heard from you a bit earlier about these cotton examples. I know you're working on a daily basis with farmers, with a number of actors. So maybe tell us a bit more about really the success factors, what can be done at the national level to scale up this organic cotton value chain and support also the agroecological transition in other crops, like vegetables that you mentioned.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, the pesticides for farmers, it is preached for the last 50 years. So if you are approaching agroecological solutions to farmers, it's a behavioral change process. We have to be with the farmers at farmer field schools level and dig out also farmers' indigenous knowledge and telling them that they sustained farming for thousands of years before agrochemicals are there. That's one thing, and to make them confident. And for the cotton part, we didn't only replace HHPs, but we replaced the whole pesticides and they became organic. Through the farmer field school approach, we went to central Ethiopian Rift Valley where pesticides are poured, not sprayed, for vegetable. And we managed to minimize the use of highly hazardous pesticides by 70%. And because of that, we were invited to the northwestern part of Ethiopia where the bee colony is declining because there is one crop which is flowering during the dry season, and the bees have only that plant as a source of nectar. And that plant is sprayed lots of pesticides. So we went there, and we tried our cotton experience and vegetable experience, and now we are trying to save these bees and pollinators. So the main purpose of scaling up and taking it up by the farmers is the farmer field school approach. It's not just telling, it's a learning process. I don't like the word training. It's a learning process. The learning process is we learn from the farmers learn from us, and it is a mutual understanding process that the farmers also practice their indigenous knowledge and also involving them in the knowledge production process, not a top-down approach, but producing knowledge together with farmers, and the farmers will take it up. For example, the organic cotton project, we started it as integrated pest management. It is the farmers that say, we want to go organic. We didn't push them. So when they are internalizing it, they will go for it. So we have to work with the farmers in a farmer field school approach.
Thank you so much, Tadesse. And now I'm going to move to your colleague, Mr. Addisu Tibebu from the Environment Protection Authority in Ethiopia. You work as the head of the compliance and enforcement desk. So what I'm interested to hear from you is maybe, again, what actions can be taken up by your governments to support those alternatives, those agroecological approaches, and also what are still the key challenges that remain. We know this transition takes time, it requires a lot of support. So what's your view on those two issues?
Okay, thank you, everybody. Good evening. And thank you for the secretariat and the organizer, IPN. So when I come back to my question, as EPA, of course, we have different policies, which is in practice now in order to control the hazardous pesticides. And also we are ratified the 3 convention, and depending on that convention, we can produce our proclamation in order to control the hazardous pesticide. So regarding with this, internationally, we are also the champion because the AMESN meeting is held or occurred in Addis Ababa in 2023, as you know. So we also got the declaration from UNEP 6. This is our achievement. And we, depending on this, we are progressing now, so we can collaboratively work together with Ministry of Agriculture and also Pan-Africa in order to control the HH for the human, in order to control environment, in order to control the health impacts that affected by the hazardous pesticide. So not only this, we collaboratively working with this organization to train the farmers and also to control the pesticide, and also we work together in order to banning by the using of those proclamations. There are different chemical can be banned, and we control the importing of those chemical from different country to inside of us. And also we did a lot of things, especially the challenge what we face now is there are many pesticide which is absoluted, and we are searching also to control and to disposing such kind of pesticide, especially when we take it not a pesticide but in our case DDT for malaria control. We are starting to dispose now almost around 4,450 ton of DDT is disposed now. The other one is we keeping for the resources, and there are different pesticides what we controlled at APA. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this update on your side on some of the progress happening right now in Ethiopia. So we just heard about concrete country examples, and I just right now would like to take 1 minute to reconnect this discussion with a global agenda. And coming back to our first presentation in particular. And for this, we also join online today by Pume Bandara. Is Pume right with us? He's working for WHO. So Pume, I would like to give you the floor very quickly to understand better how those national action and experience on the HHP we just heard can contribute to the WHO's global agenda, and how can we connect better health authorities, health topic with food system and agricultural actors.
Great,
I hope it's going to work better this time.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to participate. I just want to highlight that I actually come from the WHO Mental Health Department, and I want to emphasize that as someone who comes from a public health and suicide prevention background, I'm approaching this topic with a real sense of urgency and hope. Just as I've got the floor, I wanted to give just a sense of the numbers. So worldwide, more than 700,000 people die by suicide every year. And this is more deaths than HIV and malaria. Of those 700,000 deaths, almost a fifth, or roughly 140,000 suicides, are due to pesticide self-poisoning, particularly in areas where highly hazardous pesticides are accessible. And as Shweta pointed out earlier, they are often available in local shops and within households, largely in low and middle income countries. And what this means is that they're not just readily available for farmers, but to anyone in the community. So suicide prevention has recognized the phasing out of HHPs as a significant priority. All WHO member states have agreed to the UN to reduce the suicide rate by 1/3 by 2030. And while there has been some decline to reaching that target, we are currently not on track. But there are solutions, and what we know from decades of research and what we heard from Dr. Sumith about the case in Sri Lanka is that reducing access to lethal methods of suicide, such as HHPs, is one of the most effective and cost-effective suicide prevention strategies that exists out there. Given acutely toxic pesticides contribute so significantly to suicides, transitioning away from HHPs towards those safer alternatives is not only an environmental imperative, it's a life-saving measure that directly supports WHO's global agenda on suicide prevention and contributes significantly towards reaching that SDG target. On the point about connecting with health authorities on this issue, it's critical as it creates that necessary link between pesticide regulation, the Ministries of Agriculture and Environment, and public health outcomes. As an example, the WHO are working in countries to implement suicide prevention initiatives. And a core part of this work is also collaborating with the pesticide regulators, the Ministries of Agriculture and Environment, to identify and prioritize the phase out of the most lethal pesticides associated with suicide and acute poisoning. And we identify these pesticides through accessing necessary health data from, it could be hospitals, it could be mortuaries, vital statistics, poison centers. And this data is really critical for advocacy and for highlighting the scale of the issue. And by working together on these efforts, these activities can be better aligned across ministries to really maximize the impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And this is another reminder of why we need this whole of society approach for most of our problem today. I'm mainly coming from the food system side, and I don't see enough mental health actors around. And I think reconnecting food system with the well-being and aspect of our mental health is also so important, as you just highlighted. Great. So we have a little bit of time for questions from the audience. We also encourage people who are following us online to post their question. So please, you can address our panelists. You can also address some of the speakers of the first section. Just raise your hand, and I think some of my colleagues would help with the microphone. So we have a first question here and a second one here.
Good evening, and thank you for the presentations. First question for Mr. Amera. You mentioned about food attracting to Chlorpyrifos that you used in cotton crop. You mean it is an attract and kill? So you use a toxin or pesticide inside, no? Which kind?
Maybe let's take a series of questions and then we're going to come back to you.
I have another.
Maybe I would suggest let's give the opportunity to other people, and then if there's no question, I would come back to you. Would it be okay? I think the lady in front had something.
Thank you for the presentation, and good evening, everyone. My question is based on Sri Lanka. You indicated that you managed to eliminate about 56 pesticides. So I just wanted to find out, were there any challenges that we're facing when we're trying to eliminate those when it comes to industry? And if there were any, how did you address those challenges? Then the second one I'll ask.
Thank you. I think we have a question online.
Yes. I mean, it's a rather short answer, I guess, but the person is asking what's the difference between biocides and biopesticides. So I think it's important to clarify this as well if it was unclear.
Okay, do we have other questions around the gentleman there?
I don't know if it's a question because I'm so ignorant that I probably will not be able to end my sentence. At some point, there was this slogan, we don't want products, we want solutions. I'm not sure I understand what it means. I am a journalist. I know very little about your domain. It's my first, these are my first steps. But if I am a farmer and I must wipe out weeds and supply honey or milk, I don't know what the slogan, we don't want product, but we want solution means.
Thank you for this good question. Anyone else? Okay. So who would like to take one of those questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. I will take that one. The food spray that we use we call it food because we produce it from food. And it's a food, it's a food which attracts the good bugs, the natural enemies. They smell like pests and they are attracted to the field before the pests infest the field. And then by the time the pests lay their eggs, they are already in the field. They eat the eggs of pests and the larvae of pests and they control. And we keep economic threshold in the cotton field. That's what we do. It's not toxic. It's just a food which attracts natural enemies. And it's a biological control method. The natural enemies, the good in the no, it is in the surrounding of we have a refuge. Yes, in the cotton field. No, we spray the food spray to attract from the surrounding. We are not inoculating. We attract naturally occurring natural enemies. No, for naturally. Then the pests are attracted already by the flower of cotton. When the cotton flowers, that is the smell that attracts the pests, not this one. This one attracts only the natural enemies. Or we can have bilateral talks also when yeah.
Thank you. And I think from your answer, it's important to highlight that we need to have this biodiversity that is surrounding the fields, that all those natural enemies still have habitats to be able to play their role of controlling the pest populations, right?
Yeah, we are keeping the food web. The food web is the basis for the food systems. So we are protecting the environment and the biodiversity in the food web.
Dr. Sumith, would you like to take the question that was addressed to you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Your question. Of course, there are challenges in person and in general. But the beauty is, and actually, I think you may know that Sri Lanka was once the world highest had world highest suicide rates in somewhere in 1995. So for every 100,000 people, there were 56 casualties. So at that time, that became a kind of a social crisis and health crisis. Then our highest political authority, president, appointed a task force to work on these suicides. Then the task force was very much, positive on proposing these kind of, the regulatory actions and taking other, actions for minimizing the suicides and acute poisoning. So that was, I think, very much helpful at that time to bring the human lives, as I mentioned, to bring to save that much of lives, 93,000. So still there are challenges. Now we are working with the political hierarchy and the ministries, president, and so we think we can achieve our target by 2030, according to the SDG and other targets.
Thank you very much. And maybe who would like to take this question, and maybe I can rephrase it. We need solutions and not product, which means we need to take a system perspective rather than trying to find silver bullet. Maybe some of you would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, there are some of the usual terminologies that we are talking in this BRS for the last, 15 years or so since I participate. Most of the time when we begin, we replace chemicals with regrettable chemicals. We take one out and we bring another one, which needs also another discussion to phase out. So by products, we mean we should not replace any chemical by regrettable ones, which have similar impacts on environment and human health. But the system change is, for example, when we say agroecology, it is agroecology. Agroecological practices save lives, save the environment, biodiversity, and it is self-sustaining. We are not affecting our soil, our water, and the whole ecosystem. Otherwise, if we replace them by regrettable substitutes, we kill our soils, and a soil which doesn't have life will not give life. We inject, and we are just getting what we are injecting into the soil, for example. So it's about regrettable substitutions instead of a system-wide approach which protects the whole range of biodiversity.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'm just going to turn to you for a last word on this panel. And maybe just have a very quick reflection, a 30-second reflection on how your examples can now expand the BRS objectives across the globe, how also you can maybe inspire other countries to follow the path of your country.
My reflection on this is BRS is a very good venue. But this is also an area where the tyranny of the minority is controlling the whole system of the decision. And this is also sometimes a place where we see science is belittled. So whatever the science, the POPROC is a scientific committee assigned by parties, and the scientific committee brings lots of knowledge, spends a lot of resources and time, and comes up with a very squeezed, refined decision to be taken by parties, but it is dismantled here politically. So we have to respect science. If we respect science, we also save our environment and human health and the future generation. So my take on is we should keep the integrity of the BRS conventions by respecting science.
Actually, I think I saw a very good movie prepared by, I guess, Center for Prevention of Suicides. The the theme was good, bad, and ugly. I think it was, I think, focused Sri Lankan achievements. Good is our total achievement on bringing the suicide rates, and bad is, I think, sometimes back, our government tried to go for the organic agriculture overnight. So that was kind of a failure. And the government decided to total ban of pesticides and fertilizer. So that was totally failed. And the ugly, the thing is, now sometimes some can quote this as a kind of a negative, getting negative approach for transition from conventional agriculture to organic agriculture. So I think we have to start from somewhere. We have to go slowly, and we have to start from highly hazardous pesticides. We have enough examples and enough guidance from the WHO and FAO how to identify highly hazardous pesticides. There are criteria. So we can identify these highly hazardous pesticides according to this criteria and start from this end. Then we can definitely achieve for sustainable agriculture with biological options and other organic approaches. So that is my request and my wish. Thank you.
Thank you for those very thoughtful reflections. Shweta, I don't know if you want to have a last reflection on that. All right. Okay. So we are reaching the end of this event. And to close this session, I'm really honored to welcome Christine Fuell, the Executive Secretary of the Rotterdam Convention at FAO, to share a few concluding remarks. So Christine, I'm just giving you the floor.
Thank you very much. And this is really not an easy task. And it's also not easy for you to stay very long here. So I try to be brief, but I don't want to let you go with a little package that you can ponder over our free day tomorrow, and that will hopefully help you to engage in further discussions and to engage in the work of the BRS conventions. The harmful impacts of highly hazardous pesticides on both human health and the environment are very well documented, and they are increasingly impossible to ignore. Actually, they already made the transition from the invisible to the visible to stay within the theme of our COPs. And Shweta demonstrated that very passionately in her presentation, and also throughout this session, we were reminded again and again on these negative impacts, including impacts on the environment. You saw the pictures of the bees, for example. There is growing international recognition that within the BRS conventions and other multilateral environmental agreements of the urgent need to shift towards safer and more sustainable alternatives, such as agroecological approaches. And explicit recognition of agroecology is given in some of the MEA targets and in global frameworks such as the Global Framework on Chemicals that was mentioned a couple of times this evening, but also in other global frameworks. Let me reiterate this target A7 of this Global Framework on Chemicals, where it says that by 2035, all stakeholders have taken effective measures to phase out highly hazardous pesticides in agriculture where the risks have not been managed and where safer and affordable alternatives are available. And then, of course, also to promote the transition and make available those alternatives. And that is really very important. Make it visible and make it available. But achieving global goals starts not on a very high level, but it starts with very bold action at home in each and everybody's country. So real transformation begins at the national and at the local levels, where the toughest pesticide-related challenges must be tackled head-on. So it is you who have to really go for it, and you have to engage in it, and you are the owner of the maybe at parts invisible solution. So progress depends on country-driven solutions, courageous policy making, and empowering farmers, communities, and all those shaping our food systems bottom up. So, dear colleagues, we've just heard also very inspiring country examples that prove that real progress is not only possible, it is already happening, and it deserves far greater visibility. Sri Lanka has made significant progress in reducing pesticide-related suicides by restricting the access to HHPs and implementing a robust control system. And their target of 0 pesticide-related deaths by 2025 is both really ambitious and very commendable. And I hope that they will succeed and they will get another Oscar for that. Specific value chains have already demonstrated the economic viability of agroecological approaches as alternatives to hazardous chemicals, such as in the example of Ethiopia, Chlorpyrifos. In Ethiopia, the organic cotton sector has flourished over the past decade, and this success story is rooted in supportive partnerships, in the application of integrated pesticide management, policy support, and of course the integration of traditional farming on farmers' knowledge via, in particular, the setup of farmer field schools. We heard from Burkina Faso how organic food system actors working hand in hand with national authorities are successfully breaking down regulatory barriers to advance the use of biopesticides. Now, I read in a scientific article that the magical number of take-home messages due to our mental short-term storage capacity is 4. Therefore, I don't want to overload you with more and more details and knowledge which we have, but just 4 I wish you to remember. Our collective effort should focus on at least the following 4 things. First, show what works. Gather and share strong evidence for safer and effective alternatives. This is you who has to do that. Second, clear the path. Remove structural and regulatory roadblocks to make local solutions more accessible. Third, power up those local actors, invest in national, institutional, and financial capacity by leveraging markets and building strong partnerships and strategic alliances. And fourth, make policy and science work for the change. That means shape a supportive policy environment and protect the scientific integrity, as we heard, that speed up the transition away from highly hazardous pesticides. And now it's time to shift from a pesticide-centric mindset to a bold, integrated food system approach, one that connects commitment with actions and delivers real solutions for health, environment, and equity. And with that, I thank you, and I would like to wish you a nice evening and a nice day off tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christine. And I think it really perfectly summarized the discussion of today. A call for action that is very clear with those 4 messages. I'm just going to repeat them quickly. Show what works, clear the path, power local actors, and make policy and science work for change. And I think the last one from this event is that we have viable alternative to HHP. We just need now coordinated action to scale those up. So again, thank you for staying with us until the end of the session. And then I wish you a very good trip, a very good end of the negotiation next week. And if you have a little bit more time, and if you're interested in chemical-free farming and the future of our soil, the CPSP produced a movie, Anytime Money, on the experience of another state, Andhra Pradesh, who massively invested in transition to natural farming. Another exemplary example, sorry for the redundancy, of commitments from different actors. Thank you again, and have a good evening.